Hey guys. So I just wanted to mention, I was looking through Compass at like the requirements for CDLs, and I realized the suggested length is 250 to 5 minutes. I was like, wow, I ramble a lot in my videos. So one of my goals for now is to keep it a little more concise rather than blabble on forever. So I'm here to answer Aaron's question, which was, what have you learned so far this year at UIUC? So I'm going to take the same approach that the rest of you have, splitting things between what I've learned musically and what I've learned personally about myself. So musically, I've definitely learned that I'm a very lazy musician. So I came from a town where, or like a high school, where music wasn't considered a very like big important thing. It wasn't taken very seriously. So there was never a point in my life where like I practiced every day or I practiced for hours upon hours at a time. And I think that is really a drawback for me. And coming here was very humbling because I know that there was a lot of things that I could have learned or a lot more work that I could put into it to make me more prepared for college. But I just didn't, and there was no, the community that I came from didn't have an environment where music was considered an important thing for a kid's life, and like you weren't really that often reprimanded if you weren't practicing like hours upon hours every day. You know, it just wasn't a thing that everybody did. So now I just sort of need to kick myself in the butt a lot to make sure that I practice a lot more than I used to. And as somebody else said, you know, the playing field is leveled here, and you really need to put the work in if you're gonna compare at all to everybody else and be successful at what we're doing. So yeah, you need to stop being lazy. And even as far as like theory and oral skills and all that other stuff, I never learned any theory at all, or I didn't even know oral skills was a class that you took in college when you were a music major. I was like, what is this class? What does it even mean? You're training, okay, but what do you do? So it was a shock for me coming in, realizing that I had a lot less knowledge than I thought I did. And I always thought like, oh, you know, music is like my niche, or however you say the word, I don't know. People would always like praise me. They're like, wow, you know, you're really good at the viola. I mean, coming from the community that I did, that's not really like a big compliment. So coming here, I realized, you know, I'm not good. I'm decent, but I am where I am because I worked for it. It's not like I have some crazy talent or like I had amazing teachers or I went through an impressive Suzuki school or something, you know. So I'm realizing that I think, like Eric said, I'm definitely a little fish in this big pond. I know people talk about their AP music theory classes and technology classes and like different music exploratory classes they had in high school, and I'm just like, I have no idea what you're talking about, and I can't even believe we were offered all that stuff. I had no like access to anything like that. So I'm just hoping that, you know, working hard will get me through, and that it's okay that I don't have that much background, and that I'll be successful. So another thing that I learned a lot about myself musically is my philosophies about music education. So like we did a lot of projects in 243, for example, about why we're here, what inspired us to go into music, and what motivates us to go into education and things like that, what specific teachers were like our role models. And I'm taking another class, it's like intro to music ed type stuff, orientation thing, it's music 240. But we had a project where we had to literally write a paper about our philosophies regarding music education. So talking about why music, why it's important for like a child's education going through schooling, whether it's public or private or some charter school. But we had to explain why we thought music was a vital part of a student's education. And you know, it becomes really difficult trying to explain to people who aren't where we are and who aren't impassioned by music, to explain to them why we value it so much and what we get out of it. because they don't see it the way we do. And especially in the society that we have now, it's really focused around STEM and like making a lot of money going to science and mathy fields and just getting the job, and no one's really like inspired to like go into things they love these days. I feel like a lot of people that go into college are like, oh, I'm gonna be a business major or an engineer or chem, bio, whatever, and they go into that because they're like, I want to get a good job and make a lot of money, not because I love what I do. And a lot of people question what we do because they're like, are you sure that you want to go into music? Are you sure you want to go into teaching music specifically? Because you're not going to make much of a living. And I'm like, okay, well, that's fine because I'll be doing what I love every day. So I just had a lot of experiences this year having to explain myself as far as like why I'm here, and then talking about why I think music education is vital to a student's educational career, just like math and science and English and everything else that they learn. And as far as what I learned personally, I think the main thing I learned about is how to be comfortable with myself and how to be more sure of who I am, what I like, don't like, what I value, and what my priorities are, what's more important to me than other things, and all that sort of stuff. For example, I know that like I'm a gamer, and that's not like a big thing for girls, so it's a little difficult, making friends, especially with girls, when you're like, oh, well, do you want to play like League of Legends with me? And they're like, I have no idea what that is. And it's just tricky, and but it's okay because I know like in high school I already knew this about myself, that I was introverted and like a little quirky, so it's always been a little tricky to make friends, and I'm not one to be really outgoing and like put myself in a situation where I have to like converse with people and befriend them and go out and do things, I don't know, hang out places, whatever people do. But I've learned that no one is going to like feed you the things that you want, especially in college and like in the rest of life after high school. Because if I want to get the grades that I have right now, I have to work for them. I'm not going to be fed them, and people aren't going to tell me, oh, this is due soon, you should really get this in, or, they'll give you some guidelines and help, but you have to put in all the work. You have to be on top of everything and be scheduled and make sure that you're not slacking off and like just focusing on enjoying college life. But then at the same time, like, it's really difficult to also have a social life, because that's really important to have, friends that you can depend on. And I've learned that friends are important to me, but at the same time, I'm not going to not be myself just because I'm like desperate to make friends or like not feel lonely. I feel like I've become comfortable with just being myself and not being too shy, like still talking to people, but more letting people come to me when they're interested in like something they see me doing or something I talk about in class, or like a little Zelda lanyard that I happen to be wearing that day or something. And I don't need like a big crowd of friends, to hang around with every day. I don't need to go partying every weekend and things like that. That's something that's not important to me, and I'm learning that it's much, much better to have a small handful of very close friends who you can depend on, rather than just a bunch of acquaintances, because when you get into college, there's always that super worry that you're going to be the outcast and you're going to be alone and you're going to have no friends and like nobody to hang out with and all that. So I'm learning how to handle the social thing, but working on it. I totally did not stick to my goal, by the way, of not rambling, so maybe next time. But I also know that our videos are getting a little like off track, and it's a little confusing as to who's going to post when. And this is still my 8th CVL, but I'm a question behind, which is strange. So I'm just going to post my 9th one this weekend and answer the next question about non-Western music, and maybe I'll post a question for next week, and we'll have to plan that out and try and fix our schedule. But yeah, otherwise, happy posting and have a good weekend. I'll see you around.